But if we need to do it in interim, we have to do it. And I see that Facebook is.
Yeah, it's already saying that it's online, and just wanted to say hello to our community online, but I know that sometimes it takes some extra seconds. So let's just wait another 30 seconds before we officially welcome all of you. And it's a very interesting conversation that I was having backstage with Kelvin. Should I say it Theo or Theo? How do you pronounce your surname?
The first one. Theo.
Just lost a little bit the connection. Could you repeat the surname?
The former.
So Theo. Perfect.
Yep, that's right.
So we are live, officially live. So welcome everybody to the ScaleUp Bali podcast. I'm today with Kelvin Theo, the CEO of Funding Societies. And it's really a pleasure to welcome you, Kelvin. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So as you know, we always discuss every single week best practices about some of the best tech companies and how they are scaling up their fast-growing companies across the world. And today, it's again a pleasure to have Kelvin with our community, sharing your insights and your lessons scaling funding societies. So could you just give us an overview about who is Kelvin and who is funding societies?
Sure. So Funding Societies is basically an SME digital financing platform. So we basically give loans to small, medium businesses, and these loans are typically crowdfunded by individuals and or institutions. Similar to Market Invoice Funding Circle in the UK, and there's also an element of Cabbage and TradeShift like that in the US. So really targeting SMEs, and that as a form of quick alternative financing, and as a form of alternative investments to individuals and institutions. So we were founded in 2015. Currently, we are licensed and operating in 3 countries in Southeast Asia, Singapore, Indonesia, as well as Malaysia. And that we, over the course of the last 3.5 years, 4 years or so, we have given out a bit more than $500 million in loans, and we have lost about $3.5 million USD in terms of default. So far, I've been giving the investors a pretty good return. And that in these 3.5 years, 4 years or so, we have also raised 3 rounds of financing. The last round was led by SoftBank Ventures, and the round before in Series A was led by Sequoia Capital. And why we started Funding Societies is really because it's just to really make a positive impact in societies, right? That SMEs is especially in emerging market, comprise of a lion's share of GDP growth as well as job creation. And yet the biggest problem that I have is really financing, especially in emerging markets. So we were Reynald and I met, who is my co-founder, when we met at Harvard Business School, we wanted to just, hey, let's do, now that we are in a position of privilege, let's do something to pay back to society, right? And we find that, hey, this is potentially one of the best way to do it. So we started Funding Societies while doing our masters at Harvard Business School in 2014 to 2016. And with the vision to really help SMEs to grow and the society to enrich the societies with financial opportunities, and that's why we call ourselves Funding Societies. And I think before Funding Societies, I come from a professional services background, Malaysia, studying in Singapore on a scholarship, and then subsequently started my career with Accenture, McKinsey, as well as KKR in private equity. Went to Harvard Business School and then do this because just wanted to find a way to pay back to societies. And my co-founder comes from a family business background, Michigan undergrad, Michigan masters, family business, Harvard Business School, and then this.
Got it. Amazing. Congrats for the track record. And maybe I start with a kind of interesting question that maybe you already got it in the past, which is sometimes people that come from a professional services background need to unlearn a lot of things and learn new ones operating companies. So I'm saying this because I faced it myself. So, and it's very different to live that connection is not very good today, but I'm not sure if you got all that I was saying. I was just saying that I faced it myself, coming from a professional services background. Sometimes it's difficult to change our mindset for the operating side of the business. I was asking if you felt the same difficulty, and how did you overlap it?
I think at that point in time, I did not feel the change as much, in all candor, primarily because I think throughout my career, I've tried to angle myself towards more operations. So while in say McKinsey or in management consulting, everyone wants to do the cool stuff, i.e. strategy, right? And I find that, hey, since everyone can do the cool stuff, I want to do more than what others can do. So I basically spent half my consulting life in operations execution. The not so sexy stuff, that's really important. And then subsequently I realized that, hey, to be a real business leader, I probably need to manage the board, think about investment. That's why I moved to KKR Capstone. So the transition, I think, was fairly smooth. But I think perhaps 2 points to highlight. I think on hindsight, when I look back, I realized that I've been very fortunate to have a team that didn't mind my terrible leadership. So I have a committee team at that point in time as well. And then there were a lot of things that I could do. And that moving forward, as the company scales up to currently about 350 people, the jump towards that there was a need to constantly upgrade myself becomes more and more acute and apparent. So I think in short, the transition was okay for me, but probably terrible for my team. And over time, I think that's supposed to continuously learn and improve. And this is what I'm trying to do as well.
Yeah. We were talking before starting on
your voice,
the mission, see the leadership for each stage of the growth of the company, and at the same time to assure execution. And assuring execution, it's by repeating a lot what is the mission, what is the vision, what are the priorities, what are the values of the company, what is the culture. And this makes us very uncomfortable to be in this position, because sometimes when we see something that must need to be fixed, we tend to go there and just solve what is not working out, instead of just influencing one of the members of the leadership team, saying, what do you think about this? What about if we do this? What's your opinion about how to solve this problem? So, and you were sharing something very interesting that maybe you can repeat, that sometimes in the short term, you can go there and fix, but if it doesn't become a long-term solution.
Sure. I think so if the company is scaling fast enough, what happens is oftentimes the teams will not grow. Oftentimes it's hard for the teams to keep up with the company's growth, because once you hit a tipping point, the market takes over, the company just scales, right? And then the organization oftentimes grows faster than the existing team. And as the leader, chances are you're going to be the best salesperson or best business development person. And to keep up, to make sure that the company continues to be able to serve the growth, you kind of face a tension in terms of, hey, should I give up this growth, or should I try to spend time delegating to a team, coaching to a team, help them to grow, to scale up so that they can meet this demand, right? And I'm speaking as someone I'm not speaking as someone who knows it all. I'm speaking as someone who has made that mistake and trying to improve it and do it better the next time, which is that to fulfill certain level of, say, venture cap, like VC demands or market demands, what happens is that we face a tension about, hey, I either give up this growth or I slow down the growth and try to coach my team to do it. So either I do it myself, but at the same time, I will kill myself in the longer term, or I slow down the growth, give up the growth, but train up the team to do that, right? And I think that, of course, the theory is that, hey, you should always train up your team so that it's a scalable business. But the truth is that sometimes market realities, the timing, the opportunity of market does not allow you to do that. So in this case, we face a situation whereby, hey, I would just have to take up more and more, potentially more than what, and eventually hit a tipping point whereby I just can't manage as much. And I was debating within my team about how should we address this, right? Because market opportunity versus scalability in the future, short-term market opportunity versus long-term future growth, how should we balance it? And the Buddha's middle path or the solution that we came up with was that, yes, in the short term, we may need to chase opportunity and the leaders may have to take up more than what a group CEO probably should be doing. So just as to feel and meet those demands, but we should always do it with a keen sense or keen awareness that, hey, whenever we pass that hump, we should quickly clear train up the team as well. It's similar to like, just as technology, we have tech debt. I genuinely believe that there's such thing as organization debt as well, and we can't accumulate it for too long. So at least that's how we're thinking about it, that short term is fine to accumulate some debt, because if you're not accumulating debt, you're not growing fast enough. But longer term, we need to make sure that we always be deliberate and thoughtful in terms of clearing them.
Love that expression, organizational. That's definitely a new one. It's valuable for a quote about this episode and this conversation. And what about one of your investors is very well known for putting together a book called Measure What Matters, John Doerr. Sorry, it's not one of our investors. I'm confusing. It's from Leonard Perkins. But Measure What Matters. Do you apply OKRs in your business?
Yes, we do actually. I think talking about investors, they actually gave us at different stages of the company. They gave different advice in all candor. So when Sequoia came in 2016 for our Series A, literally 1 year after we were launched, when we closed the round, they only gave two advice, and it's still very applicable today, right? The first advice was build culture, and the second advice was tell these boys, aka us, to not grow too fast in a lending business. Grow sustainably, not grow aggressively. And I think these two values these two focus remains very critical. I think before we closed Series B, I think then the questions came to, hey, now that we have culture and whatnot, how can we think about OKRs? How can we manage a team as the company scales up bigger and bigger, right? So we actually implemented OKR in 2017. It took some time to actually educate the team because it's still a relatively new concept in Southeast Asia. And even then, there are many interpretations of how should you implement an OKR as well. Is it oftentimes companies see it as a form of performance measurement. But at the same time, the truth is that if it becomes a performance measure, then no one is going to have moonshots, right? Which is what OKR is meant to be, right? That hey, if you're achieving most of your targets, your key results, you're not stretching enough. So we actually went through a 3-6 months period to just educate the team, share, test out, run a few cycles of doing it, right? And I think a few key learnings. We went through a few stages, right? The first stage was just introducing OKRs so that people start writing their OKRs, right? Or at least start appreciating a bit, right? I think that was stage one of what we did. And we deliberately run monthly OKRs, which is crazy. We know that it's not sustainable. We are spending too much time planning, but we deliberately do it so that we know that we'll make mistakes in terms of implementation and we can quickly learn from it. So we started from just, hey, people write your OKRs, and then we critique to see whether it makes sense or not. Hey, is the KR, is it really KRs? Do we have too many of them? So and so forth, right? So it's still best practice. So that was the first phase, right? The second phase was that how can we make sure that the different leaders speak to each other to iron out the interdependencies themselves? Because sometimes we realize that every organization every team just runs themselves, come with the OKRs that don't gel with each other. That, hey, to execute this, I need tech support, but it's not on tech OKR, so end up we cannot achieve that. So that was what we did for the second phase, right? And the third phase was basically just almost autopilot, right? That, hey, the team just do it themselves almost automatically because they see that the tool is being useful to run or to run their team to achieve the results, right? So we went through that 3 phases, right? And in all candor, as new leaders come in, we kind of have to repeat some of this phase again and again. But it's something that we've implemented to manage the team across all 3 countries.
Very, very good. And this is usually also one of the challenges that creates a lot of chaos in the organization. That's what we talk about, matrix organizations and the squads, etc., which is to aggregate or converge the OKRs for each of the teams, for the company, and for the regions. So I'm just thinking about having a squad with an STR, an account executive, and someone from customer success in the team, and some of them are maybe led by a country manager, and the customer success advocate is led by the VP of customer success, and the sales guys are led by the head of sales or the sales manager or whatever it is. So which means that it is a lot of complexity to understand who should I report to and what should be my OKRs. So how do you solve this mess of having free markets and different teams, and maybe also the remote part of it, right? Because they are not all in the same location.
I think we are going through stages of evolution. I think for now, so if I just take a step back, we are basically structured based on country functions as well as regional functions. Primarily because SME financing or small medium business financing is a very localized business from a regulation, from a culture, from an economic development, credit risk, customer segments, so on and so forth. It's a very localized business, right? So we kind of, for functions that are very much local related or local content heavy, we kind of have it structured as a local team. And then functions that are not so local content heavy, we drive it regionally. So example, local functions would be local sales, local marketing, local credit, credit risk management, local customer service. And then regional teams would be our data science, our engineering, our tech, our product, finance, legal, so on and so forth, right? That cuts across branding, that cuts across regionally, right? I think we are at a phase of, hey, in countries are working very well in terms of their OKRs. The group level functions are not working that well, and we are trying to reconcile that. And some of the things that we have done so far, and at least it's a work in progress, is that since about 2 years ago, we have been running quarterly or 4-monthly leadership offsite. So we fly all the leaderships into the same country to just discuss about topics, to align about things, right? So that even for regional functions, there's a certain level of regularity and social relationship to really drive the conversations, right? And starting from 1 year ago, we started flying in group leadership on a monthly basis to meet each other, right? Because so that we can be even more agile in terms of discussions, in terms of debate or whatnot. And that helps a lot in terms of driving alignment at a regional level. But I do think that there's still be quite a lot of things that we need to do to better align and develop common understanding for functions that cut across different countries, and have a more educated discussions of decisions in terms of prioritizations or OKRs. So group level is still a work in progress in Auckland, after 3.5 years, 4 years in the business.
Got it. And yeah, that's a good point. And usually I always get a lot of questions. What should be the different meeting rhythms that I should put in place in order to review those OKRs? Because it's good to define what is the direction, but if we are not tracking and taking decisions on the data that we are collecting and what we are learning, we are losing a great opportunity of moving faster and moving in a much more effective way. So how do you kind of set up those meetings, and what are the meetings maybe that you have today? So daily huddles, weekly meetings, and so how does it work in your organization?
So I think that we have, if I just think from top to bottom, I think, so we have a weekly group leadership call on a Monday evening. So what happens is that, and the group leadership comprises of country heads as well, which is basically responsible for each of the local countries, as well as regional functional heads. That includes engineering, product, data, finance, HR, as well as my chief of staff, right? So as a weekly call, and then subsequently within each of the offices, what we do, we basically have 2-3 types of meeting for different reasons. So on a Monday morning, we have a weekly check-in that lasts for 40 minutes, primarily as a forum for corporate discourse, to drive thinking and conversations as a group, to really align directions, to really reinstill messages, culture, announcements, so on and so forth, which is about 40 minutes every Monday. And then And on a weekly basis, we'll have the country heads leadership meetings whereby the key functional heads within each of the countries will just come together for discussions for about 2 hours or so on a Monday morning, Monday afternoon. And then on the office level, on a monthly basis, we basically have a monthly town hall for each of the office that talks about basically the updates in terms of how are we performing and in terms of our KPIs for that particular month. One learning that we have done was that over time we realized that it's a lot of content to cover on a monthly basis for both business and technology. Mm-hmm. And you end up with the folks who are arranged to speak at the end of the town hall has very little time. So over time, we kind of stagger it to have 1 month on business town hall, 1 month on tech town hall, 1 month on business town hall, 1 month on tech town hall, so that the group level functions will have sufficient level of exposure and coverage so that the folks know where are we heading for in terms of technology and can build a certain level of alignment between business and technology, right? So that's something that we do as an organization. I think personally, I do catch up with my direct reports on a one-on-one basis every 2 weeks, as well as selected or ad hoc skip level meetings, just so that people feel that I'm accessible, even though I'm not always available, and also so that I can triangulate and see whether information has been cascaded down, or what is the temperature of the team. How can we address it as an organization?
Amazing. And you said that the town hall happens every month? That's what you said?
Yes. First week of the month. Or first Friday of the month.
Got it. That's very good. And I know that there are some companies who are doing a town hall almost every week. What do you think about it? Too much?
I do think it's quite a bit. I guess it depends on what they use for town hall, and how long is each town halls, right? I guess if you're doing it on a weekly basis and if all information is automated, it almost serves like a weekly check-in that we have for us. And that if the company, if the environment is that fast changing, then a weekly town hall does help the company to be a lot more agile. I think for our case, because some of the execution pieces requires time to execute. So I think that a monthly cadence, actually in reality, a 2 monthly cadence that we're currently doing now, if you're just looking at business, or tech, is perhaps is a pretty comfortable or pretty meaningful cadence for us, because you don't want to reach a situation whereby, hey, you have a bi-weekly or you have a monthly town hall and you have nothing to talk about because what you talked about last time has not been fully executed and nothing to discuss. So I think for fast-moving environment, it is probably something that the company would need, but for us, probably it's not so useful.
Got it. And usually, what are some of the issues that you have in terms of cross-functional topics that are not being properly communicated? And you were talking about alignment before. So how do you drive this alignment across all functions and across all regions?
I think this regional alignment, the most frequent area of misalignment is oftentimes technology prioritization, right? Because in Southeast Asia, there aren't that many engineers. Tech resources or tech team is oftentimes very limited, and that for each of the country there are different priorities. How do we make sure that we prioritize based for maximum impact? I think this is still a work in progress for us, but one of the key learnings that we have done is that we basically came up with a framework in terms of, hey, what are the key things will be definitely prioritized upwards? What are the categories of topics? And so how we look at it is anything that's regulatory related, it will skip the queue, will just go all the way up. Anything that's security related, we'll skip the queue, will go all the way up. Any bugs or mission critical functions will skip the queue, will go all the way up. And then any strategic partnerships that's time sensitive, what we call wildcards, will basically be prioritized upward first. What happens is that then there are 50-60% of of task capacity that we can use it for more discretionary items. And for those items, we make sure that the product managers basically work with the business teams to really quantify the impact or has clarity on the impacts and really spec it out so that we have clarity in terms of how much time or man hours or energy that we need to put into to develop that piece, right? And then we basically have we have a voting sheet whereby each function, each country heads will be able, or as well as selected functions will be able to vote for what is important for the organization. And my co-founder and I basically serve as an intermediary to basically moderate the overall voting so that we achieve global optima instead of local optima. So that's a process that we're doing. It sounds straightforward in theory, but when we actually execute it, sometimes it can be quite complex, or sometimes can be quite ambiguous because the impact as well as effort quantification sometimes is not that straightforward, and that will require, and when that happens, to a large extent, really depends on the trust and the informal relationship that we have built with each other for us as leaders to make a call, right? So if we create an environment where it's pretty hostile, or where there's a lot of adverse political undercurrent, then it comes across as, hey, I'm doing prioritizing this because we are favoring someone over the other. And that's something that we're trying to kill off within organizations. We have a whole core values called no politics, no asshole, right? That we actively kill off. So that level of trust helps us to basically make a call that, hey, this is the best way to optimize for the company. Let's go with this.
This is a very good point. So when you need to take a decision without, how can I say, reliable data or all the information that you need to take this decision, and in scale-ups and startups, this happens, I would say, every single hour or half an hour. So which sometimes create the temptation of, as we don't know what is the right decision, maybe it's better to ask the CEO what we should do in this situation. And then you have different teams and different people. Even if you just have your direct report, let's imagine that just your leadership team is waiting for your decision because they don't have a very good overview or very good data to take a decision, not just because they don't want to take a decision, they don't know what decision to take. And of course, when they don't know what decision to take, they would want to protect themselves or protect the business. Sometimes it's not even taking care of themselves, and they want to go to the CEO to brainstorm. So if they all do this every single day, you don't have enough time to do your own job. So how do you create the trust and the confidence that maybe they can take the wrong decision? And how do you avoid this dependency over you?
I think that over time, we are trying to be better and better in terms of quantifying the impact as well as the resource or the energy that's required or the mandates that's required to build certain things, right? And in all candor, currently it's still a bit of a work in progress whereby 80% of the time, it is quite obvious why it's more important than the others. It is 20% of the time that is not that, hey, I'll need to come in, or Reynolds needs to come in as a tiebreaker in terms of what to prioritize or not, right? So I think it is, to us, it's a journey. When we first started off this prioritization process, the truth is that 50% of the time we need to come in. So over time, as people become more used to and we build better clarity in terms of trade-offs, it becomes 80%, and hopefully at some point we become 90%, and eventually we can be out of the process. But I think that is, in all candor, it's a bit of a journey, and we're still trying to work towards full autonomy or full thought leadership within the existing teams.
Yeah. And just to give a little bit more of clarity of what we are discussing to the audience and to the community, in practical terms, and I was in a meeting like this 1 or 2 weeks ago, you are saying that your main focus is international sales and going up to enterprise, and you are selling much more to SMB. And then you realize that this is your target for your most mature market, your domestic market. And for international markets, you need maybe to start in a tier 3 kind of customer. So, and this of course creates tension across who should I hire first, the international people or the national people? What should I ship first in terms of products, the international features or the national features? And again, if we go more international, the revenues numbers can go a little bit slower because we are not so well known. But at the same time, if we don't grow internationally, we will not be able to scale in the long term. So this is the kind of discussions that we might have in a leadership team. And then imagine that each of the leaders of each department are also thinking that they are working on the most important thing of the company. So as a CEO, this can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, I think to the extent possible, we kind of set rules or frameworks, right? So just now I mentioned that there's different categories of tasks that we can prioritize. The truth is that when it comes, another lens that we can look at it is that if you are if within 6 months you're going to fundraise, guess what? You're probably going to prioritize the local business first because it'll give you the immediate numbers. And
Correct.
Say if you just fundraise, guess what? You're going to prioritize the foreign business, international business, because you have the runway to build that business up, right? So I think that as long as the leader gives enough context of why the trade-offs are made, or to the extent possible, set the rules of the trade-off, I think that's fine. I think so far, inherently with the rules of trade-off that we have set is that anything relates to regulations will go up. Anything that's related to security will go up because both relates to existential risks or existential topics. And when it comes to strategic partnership, it is a way for us to drive growth, and therefore it's a wildcard that we'll prioritize. Maybe when it we will come to some point whereby the wildcard is no longer partnerships, but what will drive growth is, say, like you say, international business, new countries or new products. Then that will become a form of wildcard. And the rule of trade-offs that we inherently set is what's the impact versus energy that's needed to put that in. For now, it works for us, but I would think that if we have this conversation 6 months from now, I may have a more evolved and refined view than what I have now.
So as you said before, you have amazing investors that believe in your company and that have been funding the journey and helping you, of course, to also increase the value of the company and on the execution level. So, and we are talking about names as Sequoia and SoftBank, as you said before. What were your key lessons or key learning points in terms of fundraising, and maybe kind of comparing the Series A and the Series B rounds?
I think so. In all candor, we have been extremely fortunate in the last 3 rounds of fundraising, whereby we did not have to meet more than 3 investors to actually get the term sheet that we need. Especially in Southeast Asia, where there's what they call the valley of death. So in Southeast Asia, the venture capital industry is so new, such that there aren't that many funds, and if you miss your shot, that's it, right? So we're extremely fortunate in our fundraising. So some of our lessons may not be necessarily applicable to everyone, but I think one thing that turns out to be quite helpful was to really have the end in mind even before fundraising, right? I genuinely believe that the outcome of fundraising has already been decided even before you enter into the investment committee meeting. The outcome is already decided because you need to create an environment and the conditions whereby the logical answer for the VCs towards you is a yes, right? And what do I mean by that? Is to basically find out, hey, right after our seed round, what we did was that we immediately find out what does it take to raise Series A, and we basically brought a whole leadership team together to brainstorm how to work towards that. So that by the time we raise Series A, we have all the ingredients that the investors would look out for in terms of evaluating a deal like this. And the same applies for Series B, right? We know a Series B investor will look out for A, B, C, D, E. By then, we have overachieved in all A, B, C, D, E. The only logical answer for them to respond to us is to invest in them. So that turns out to be a very important lesson for us, or at least very important principle for us. But moving forward, the truth is that what does it take to raise Series C or Series D becomes gradually less clear because in the last few years, Southeast Asia benefit from the fact that it is following, say, US or is trailing behind China. So we kind of can predict what will come in the future because it has happened in the US, Europe, and China. I think Southeast Asia is at a turning point whereby we are kind of out innovating or at least localizing the various proven business model overseas to the local context in a large extent. One example is Grab and Gojek, right? They basically started as a copy and paste from the ride sharing apps in the US, Uber and whatnot. But now they've kind of evolved as a super app, which is kind of a different beast by itself, even different from compared to what their predecessors have been in, say, US and Europe, right? Similarly, for us, we're kind of going through that crossroad of evolving beyond beyond just copying what has worked overseas to something that's new, and therefore the matrix towards what will raise a successful Series C and successful Series D will become different as well, and therefore the ability for us to constantly keep ahead in terms of what it takes to raise the next round becomes harder, but also becomes even more important in that case.
Very good points. And what were the main milestones in terms of the Series A and the Series B that you needed to achieve? And in your mind, what are the key milestones that you need to prove in the next stage for, let's say, Series C?
Sure. At least how we thought about it when we were in Series A was that in our space, given that we are in SME financing, given that we are in high volume, low margin business, before Series A, we were only in one country, Singapore. And we realized that for any investors to be willing to invest in us, they need to be able to see that the size of market is meaningful enough. And therefore, within 6 months of launching in Singapore, we did a crazy decision of launching into Indonesia. And at that time, Rina and I were still studying in the US, right? We're still doing our MBA at Harvard, right? So it was a decision that many has considered foolish or insane at that point in time. But we did that because of our fundamental thesis that no Series A investor or no Tier 1 investor is going to invest into a company that is only in Singapore, because Singapore has only 6 million population. And it turns out our thesis was right, that we managed to raise Series A from Sequoia because, in their words, because we are aggressive in expansion, but conservative in terms of risk management and compliance. So our early success of Indonesia gave them confidence to actually invest in us, even though we were kind of late comer in the industry. So that was the key milestones that was critical for our Series A raise. I think for Series B raise, the key milestone was that we became a regional market leader. At that point in time, we were as shared just now, we were late in the market. The earliest player was started 2 years ahead of us. We were just playing catching up, right? But to raise a good Series B from a Tier 1 investor, we needed to be not just a good player, but we needed to be a market leader. So literally, we doubled down in terms of execution, and we managed to overtake all early players to become the market leader. And that allows us to win SoftBank. But I think not just winning by the top line, but also build actually real competencies that allow us to scale and continuously win in the longer term, not just by taking more risks, but by just being better. So that allows us to win SoftBank's investment in 2018 during April, actually. At least our view of Series C, and we have not raised it, so we are just guessing.
Yeah.
Currently, we are about 4 times or 5 times of the size of our closest competitor. I think our goal is to become not just as a strong SME financing company, but really, not just as number 1 in terms of peer-to-peer lending or peer-to-business lending, but really to start measure ourselves as a meaningful player in terms of overall SME financing as a whole in Southeast Asia. How can we serve, say, 1% of the whole market? Instead of just comparing ourselves against other peers, how can we compare ourselves against all financing institutions? So that's 1. I think number 2 is that I think the regional expansion piece remains critical, because our fundamental vision is to become the biggest SME digital financing platform in whole Southeast Asia. So the continuous expansion is critical for us. I think the technology investments as well as risk investments, I think that's critical, because I think that's what allows us to, because in our business, risk scales disproportionately with scale. So the bigger we scale, the more likely we will just suddenly explode. And therefore, the need for us to actually step up in terms of compliance, in terms of governance, in terms of technology, in terms of portfolio risk management, so on and so forth, becomes higher. So showing how we have built competency to manage that kind of scale, I think becomes critical. And finally, something that may be counterintuitive that not everyone will agree with me is that we do aim to achieve profitability in the near future as we raise Series C or after we close Series, or before or after we close in the near future, because I do think that the irrational exuberance of growth obsessed but but startups with no path to profitability, I do think that the patience will run thin in the near future. The truth is that we have started seeing signs of that happening in China with in Q4 last year. I wouldn't be surprised if it starts spreading to the rest of the regions. And therefore, building a real sustainable business with real profit, not just earning money, I think that's critical, while not sacrificing growth. So that's something that we're trying to work towards. I'm not sure if we can, but I think that's quite critical.
Very good point. So I think it's almost a doctorate on fundraising in a very simple term. So which shows that you really know how to do it. And yeah, we are coming to an end of this session. I feel that it's always so much more to be covered, but that's the time and the resources that we have to allocate. And I would like to close the show by asking you one of our favorite questions in the show, which is, if you had the opportunity to meet Kelvin 4 years ago, what would you tell him? So what kind of advice, what would be the number one thing that you would tell him?
I think the number one, so there are a lot of mistakes and lessons that we have learned along the way, but one that I feel people know it, but still make the same mistake over and over again.
That's a good one.
The part about raising the bar and hiring up sooner. So we are kind of at a juncture whereby we are trying to hire not just the best in Singapore, not just the best in Southeast Asia, but best globally, right? And that the whole, and I think when we speak to Sequoia, they were commenting that we are doing this upgrading of team a lot earlier than the other startups. But I do think that even then, I think we are still late. I wish we have done that a lot earlier. And I think the key lesson is that we should, even as we are in Series B, we should be hiring someone for Series D, right? That someone who can, to the extent possible, of course, someone who really hiring for the future instead of hiring for the current. It's something that we always knew. We talked to the team that, hey, as and when the organization outgrows you, we should have the humility to hire someone to whom we report to, including myself, right? And if I can't lead a company, happy to hire a group professional CEO and I report to him, and that's perfectly fine. But I think that oftentimes we know it, but we still do it too late. So I think a key lesson is that if you think that you need to do that in 9 months from now, like kind of do it now. So you're probably overestimating the runway that you have in the current team. And you need to also start investing into your team to see how can you lengthen that runway sooner than wait for 6 months' time or 9 months' time. I think that balance of that forward thinkingness in terms of hiring up faster as well as investing into your team to extend that runway, I think that's something that's absolutely critical. So wish I had done that earlier, even though I knew it beforehand.
I never do this, but I just need to ask the opposite question. So there are a lot of CEOs who have the fear of hiring too early and someone who is too strategic. And sometimes what you need is someone who is more hands-on, who makes things happen because you don't have yet all the resources to build the team that this person is used to have. So how do you avoid this mistake, applying your key lesson, which is upgrade your team as soon as possible and always hire for the next 12 months at least, and if possible, 24 months?
I think that if you are hiring for 24 months ahead, it doesn't mean that you're hiring someone who cannot be meaningful right now, right? I think that person must be able to be meaningful right now as well. Of course, the overlap of that Venn diagram between current and future sometimes is quite limited, but I think having that real awareness, not just as a head knowledge somewhere, but actual real awareness and deliberation, I think that's really important. Because if that deliberation, what I would do 6 months ago or 9 months ago, is that I would actually deliberately allocate time for me to start networking for folks of my future hires, right? To start build relationship with that, because when the time comes, hey, I have a whole network or whole group of folks that I can just hire up instead of having to use headhunters and hire and search for now, right? So I think that awareness itself can be quite needle moving. I hope I will not make the same mistakes again, but yeah, well, that's life, I guess.
That's a very good one and a very good way of closing the show. Kelvin, thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck with funding societies. Looking forward to having you back when you raise or when you achieve the next milestones, even more important than raising funds and profitability. And I just wanted to say thank you also to our community for attending live or for just seeing the recording after this. You can watch these conversations with top leaders across the world at scaleupvalley.com/community. So 60 plus episodes around scaling product, engineering, sales, marketing, and also CEO interviews like this one. So thank you so much and see you next week. Thanks for joining.